What if I told you that my grandfather's 90th birthday party became the most terrifying night of my life? That a simple family gathering would expose a web of lies so twisted, it would destroy everything I thought I knew about the people I trusted most. My name is Sarah. And this is the story of how one whispered warning from my husband saved my life. It started like any other family celebration. Balloons, cake, smiling faces. But underneath the laughter was something sinister. Something that would make me question everything. Let me take you back to that night. The night that changed everything forever. It was Saturday evening, October 15th. The date is burned into my memory like a scar. My mom had been planning Grandpa's 90th birthday for months. She wanted everything perfect. The decorations, the food, the guest list. My sister Emma helped with everything. They spent weeks coordinating, calling relatives, ordering supplies, making sure every detail was just right. I should have known something was wrong when they kept having hushed conversations. Conversations that stopped the moment I walked into the room. But I was too trusting, too naive. I thought they were just planning surprises. Maybe a special video, or a memory book. How wrong I was. The party was at Mom's house. The same house where I grew up. The same house that held so many happy memories. Those memories would be tainted forever after that night. I arrived at 6:30 with my husband David. He'd been acting strange all day. Checking his phone constantly. Looking over his shoulder. When I asked what was wrong, he just said he had a bad feeling. That something felt off. I laughed it off. David was always paranoid. Always seeing danger where none existed. Or so I thought. We walked through the front door to the sound of laughter and music. The living room was packed with relatives I hadn't seen in years. Uncle Mike from Colorado. Cousin Janet from Texas. Even Great-Aunt Ruth, who rarely left her nursing home. Everyone was there. All of Grandpa's loved ones, gathered to celebrate his incredible milestone. Grandpa was in his wheelchair by the fireplace. His eyes lit up when he saw me. "Sarah," he called out, his voice still strong despite his age. "Come give your old grandpa a hug." I rushed over and wrapped my arms around him. He smelled like Old Spice and peppermint, just like always. "Happy birthday, Grandpa," I whispered in his ear. 90 years young. He squeezed my hand. But something in his grip felt desperate. Urgent. Like he was trying to tell me something without words. I pulled back and looked into his eyes. For just a moment, I saw something there. Fear. Sadness. I couldn't tell. But before I could ask, Mom appeared beside us. "Sarah, honey," she said, pulling me into a hug. "I'm so glad you made it." Her embrace felt different too. Too tight. Too long. Like she was holding on to me for dear life. "Wouldn't miss it," I said, forcing a smile. "This is such a beautiful party, Mom. You and Emma outdid yourselves." Mom's smile didn't reach her eyes. "We just wanted it to be special. Grandpa deserves the best." She glanced nervously toward the kitchen, where Emma was bustling around with platters of food. "Emma's been working so hard," Mom continued. "She insisted on making all of Grandpa's favorites herself. That should have been my first real warning sign. Emma hated cooking. She lived on takeout and frozen dinners. But I was too distracted by the crowd to think about it." David stayed close to my side as we mingled. He barely spoke to anyone. Just nodded politely and kept scanning the room. His behavior was making me uncomfortable. People were starting to notice. "What's wrong with you?" I whispered as we stood near the dessert table. "Something's not right here," he murmured back. "Can't you feel it?" I looked around the room. Everyone seemed happy. Grandpa was laughing at Uncle Mike's stories. The cousins were catching up. Kids were running around playing tag. It looked like any normal family gathering. But David's words planted a seed of doubt in my mind. And once that seed was there, I started noticing things. Like how Mom and Emma kept exchanging meaningful looks across the room. How they both seemed nervous whenever anyone got too close to Grandpa. How they redirected conversations whenever someone mentioned Grandpa's health or his living situation. I tried to push these thoughts away. This was supposed to be a celebration, a time for joy and family bonding. But the feeling of unease kept growing stronger. Around 8 o'clock, Emma called everyone to gather for the cake ceremony. She'd made a beautiful chocolate cake with 90 candles. It took 3 people to help Grandpa blow them out. Everyone cheered and clapped as the last flame was extinguished. Speech. Speech, someone called out. Grandpa struggled to stand from his wheelchair. David stepped forward to help, but Emma quickly moved between them. Grandpa's getting tired, she said firmly. Maybe we should save the speeches for later. But Grandpa was already on his feet. His hands shook as he gripped his walker, but his voice was clear and strong. I want to say something, he announced. While I still can. The room fell silent. Even the children stopped playing and turned to listen. Grandpa's eyes swept across the room, taking in all the faces of his family. When his gaze landed on me, he held it for several seconds. Family is everything, he began. It's the most precious thing we have. But sometimes. He paused, his voice catching slightly. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us deepest. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. People shifted awkwardly and looked at each other with confused expressions. Mom quickly stepped forward. Dad, you're getting emotional. Why don't you sit down and have some cake? But Grandpa wasn't finished. He looked directly at me again. Sarah, he said, I need you to know that no matter what happens, I love you. And I'm sorry. Sorry for what, Grandpa? I asked, my heart starting to race. Before he could answer, Emma was at his side, gently but firmly guiding him back to his wheelchair. He's just overwhelmed, she said loudly. All this excitement is too much for him. But I saw something in Grandpa's eyes as he sat down. Something that looked like a warning. David's grip on my arm tightened. We need to go, he whispered in my ear. What? We just got here. We haven't even had cake yet. Trust me, he said urgently. We need to leave. Now. I was about to argue when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Emma was cutting the cake with surgical precision. But she wasn't serving it to everyone. She was only giving pieces to certain people. The elderly relatives. The ones who lived alone. The ones who didn't have much contact with the outside world. Grandpa was one of them. My heart started pounding as I watched him take a bite of the cake. He made a face like it tasted bitter, but Emma encouraged him to keep eating. It's your favorite, Grandpa, she said sweetly. Chocolate with raspberry filling. But I remembered Grandpa telling me just last month that he couldn't eat chocolate anymore. It upset his stomach. David pulled me toward the hallway. Get your bag, he whispered. We're leaving. Act like nothing's wrong. I wanted to protest, but something in his tone stopped me. He wasn't being dramatic. He was deadly serious. I grabbed my purse from the coat closet, my hands trembling. My mind was racing with terrible possibilities. What was in that cake? Why was Emma only serving it to certain people? And why did Grandpa look so scared? We made our way toward the front door, smiling and saying goodbye to relatives along the way. Leaving so soon? Mom asked, appearing beside us with forced cheerfulness. David has an early morning, I lied. Work thing. Mom's smile flickered for just a moment. That's too bad. Well, drive safe. She hugged me again. That same desperate, clinging embrace. I love you, Sarah, she whispered. Remember that. The words sent chills down my spine. Why did it sound like she was saying goodbye forever? We made it to the car without incident. But as soon as David started the engine, he immediately locked all the doors. David, what the hell is going on? I demanded. He pulled out of the driveway slowly, checking his mirrors constantly. Something's very, very wrong in that house, he said grimly. What do you mean? It's just a birthday party. No, it's not. He turned to look at me, his face pale in the streetlight. I think they're trying to kill your grandfather. The words hit me like a physical blow. What? That's insane. Mom and Emma would never listen to me, David interrupted. I've been watching them all night. The way they're acting. The way they're controlling who talks to your grandfather. The way they only gave cake to certain people. I thought about what I'd observed. The nervous glances. The redirected conversations. The selective cake distribution. You think the cake was poisoned? I don't know what's in it. But your grandfather knew something was wrong. Didn't you see how he was trying to warn you? I remembered Grandpa's desperate grip on my hand. His cryptic speech about family and betrayal. The way he apologized to me. My phone started ringing. It was Mom. Don't answer it, David said quickly. I have to. If I don't, she'll know we suspect something. I answered on the fourth ring. Hi, Mom. Honey, I'm so glad you made it home safely, she said. Her voice sounded strained. I wanted to apologize if your grandfather seemed a bit confused tonight. He's been having some memory issues lately. Memory issues? Grandpa had seemed perfectly lucid to me. Sharp as ever. He seemed fine, Mom. Just emotional about the party. Well, you know how he gets. Sometimes he says things that don't make sense. She was trying to discredit anything Grandpa might have told me. My stomach twisted with realization. Mom, is everything okay? A pause. Of course, honey. Everything's wonderful. We're just cleaning up now. How's Grandpa feeling? Another pause, longer this time. His resting. All the excitement wore him out. Something in her tone made my blood run cold. Mom, I should go, sweetheart. Lots to clean up. I love you. She hung up before I could say anything else. David was watching me with grim understanding. She's lying, isn't she? I nodded, unable to speak. The woman who raised me. The woman who taught me right from wrong. Was she really capable of something so horrible? We have to go back, I said suddenly. We have to help him. No, David said firmly. It's too dangerous. If they're willing to hurt your grandfather, they won't hesitate to hurt us too. But we can't just leave him there. We're not going to. We're going to call the police. I fumbled for my phone with shaking hands. This felt surreal. Like I was living in a nightmare. But as I dialed 911, more pieces of the puzzle started falling into place. Grandpa's recent comments about updating his will. Mom and Emma's sudden interest in his finances. The way they'd been isolating him from other family members over the past few months. They'd been planning this. For how long? The operator answered. 911, what's your emergency? I think someone is trying to poison my grandfather. What's your location, I gave them Mom's address, my voice shaking. Are you at the scene now? No, we left. But my grandfather is still there. Along with other elderly relatives who might be in danger. We're dispatching units now. Can you tell me what makes you believe someone is being poisoned? I explained about the cake. The selective serving. Grandpa's behavior. The way Mom and Emma were acting. It sounded crazy even to me. But the dispatcher took it seriously. We'll have officers there within minutes. Are you somewhere safe? Yes, we're in our car about 5 minutes away. Stay on the line with me. David was driving in circles around the neighborhood, staying close enough to see what happened but far enough away to be safe. The officers are approaching the house now, the dispatcher said. They're going to request entry to check on the welfare of the individuals inside. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. What if I was wrong? What if this was all some horrible misunderstanding? But deep down, I knew I wasn't wrong. All the signs had been there. I'd just been too trusting to see them. The officers are at the door, the dispatcher continued. They're requesting immediate medical assistance. My world tilted. What happened? I can't give you details over the phone, but paramedics are en route. Several individuals appear to need medical attention. I dropped the phone and started sobbing. David pulled over and held me as I fell apart. We'd been right. But we were too late to stop it completely. The next hour was a blur of sirens and flashing lights. Police cars. Ambulances. A fire truck. We watched from a distance as they brought people out on stretchers. Grandpa was one of them. He was unconscious but alive. Uncle Mike wasn't as lucky. Neither was Great Aunt Ruth. The paramedics worked frantically, but it was too late for some of them. I watched my mother and sister being led away in handcuffs. Even from far away, I could see the shock and disbelief on their faces. Had they really thought they wouldn't get caught? Detective Martinez interviewed us at the police station. She was kind but thorough. "Your call potentially saved several lives," she told me. "If you'd waited even 30 minutes longer, the death toll would have been much higher." "How many?" I asked, dreading the answer. 3 confirmed deaths so far. 4 others in critical condition, including your grandfather. I felt sick. 3 people were dead because of my family. People I'd known and loved my whole life. What was in the cake? We're still running tests, but preliminary results suggest a combination of insulin and digoxin, enough to cause cardiac arrest in elderly individuals. I remembered Emma asking detailed questions about everyone's medical conditions over the past few months. She'd been planning their murders down to the smallest detail. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would they do this?" Detective Martinez consulted her notes. "Based on what we've uncovered so far, it appears to be financially motivated. Your grandfather recently updated his will, leaving substantial sums to several family members who were at the party tonight. The victims weren't random. They were the beneficiaries. Mom and Emma had planned to kill everyone who was set to inherit money, leaving themselves as the sole survivors to claim Grandpa's entire estate. It was premeditated mass murder. Over the following weeks, the full scope of their plan became clear. They'd been researching untraceable poisons for months. They'd practiced the timing and dosages. They'd even prepared explanations for why so many elderly family members might die suddenly at the same event. Natural causes. The excitement was too much for their weak hearts. It might have worked, too. If David hadn't been paying attention. If he hadn't trusted his instincts. If we hadn't left when we did. Grandpa survived, but he was never the same. The poison had damaged his heart. He died peacefully in his sleep 3 months later. At least he lived long enough to know the truth. To know that some of his family had tried to save him. The trial was a media circus. Mom and Emma both claimed they were innocent. That they'd been framed somehow. But the evidence was overwhelming. The poison residue in the kitchen. The internet searches on their computers. The financial documents showing their mounting debts. Emma got life without parole. Mom got life with the possibility of parole after 30 years. I was 32 years old. If Mom served her minimum sentence, I'd be 62 when she got out. I'd lived my entire adult life by then. Maybe have grandchildren of my own. The woman who gave birth to me, who taught me to ride a bike and helped with homework and dried my tears after heartbreaks. She'd planned to murder her own father for money. How do you reconcile something like that? The hardest part wasn't the trial or the media attention. It was the doubt that crept in afterward. Had there been signs I missed over the years? Warning signals that should have told me what they were capable of? I replayed every family gathering, every conversation, every interaction, looking for clues I'd been too blind to see. David was my anchor through it all. He'd saved not just my life, but the lives of 4 other people who survived because we called for help when we did. "How did you know?" I asked him one night, months after the trial ended. We were in bed, but I couldn't sleep. "I rarely slept well anymore. I didn't know for sure," he admitted. "But something felt wrong from the moment we walked in. Your mom and sister were too nervous. Too controlling. But why didn't I see it? Because they were your family. You trusted them. That's not a weakness, Sarah. That's what normal people do. But I didn't feel normal anymore. I felt broken. Like my ability to trust had been permanently damaged. How could I ever feel safe around people again, knowing what I now knew about human nature? The therapy helped, eventually. Dr. Chen specialized in trauma from family betrayal. She assured me that what I was feeling was normal. Betrayal trauma is particularly devastating because it comes from the people who are supposed to protect us, she explained. Your mother and sister violated the most fundamental bonds of trust. Will I ever be able to trust people again? Yes, but it will take time. And it will be a different kind of trust. More careful. More discerning. She was right. I did learn to trust again, but I was never as naive as I'd been before. I became better at reading people, at recognizing red flags, at listening to my instincts. The irony wasn't lost on me. My family's betrayal had made me more perceptive, stronger in some ways. But I would have traded that strength to have my mother and sister back as the people I thought they were. 2 years after the trial, I got a letter from Mom in prison. I stared at it for days before opening it. Inside was a single page covered in her familiar handwriting. Dear Sarah, it began. I know you hate me. I know you'll probably never forgive me. But I need you to know that I never meant for it to go this far. I crumpled up the letter without reading the rest. I didn't want her excuses or her justifications. There was nothing she could say that would make any of it okay. But later that night, I smoothed out the letter and read it all the way through. She claimed it had been Emma's idea, that she'd been manipulated and coerced. She said she loved Grandpa and never wanted him to suffer. She begged for my forgiveness and understanding. Every word felt like another knife in my heart. Because even if any of it was true, she'd still gone along with it. She'd still put poison in that cake. She'd still served it to people she claimed to love. I never wrote back. 3 years later, Emma died in prison. Another inmate stabbed her during a fight in the yard. I felt nothing when I heard the news. No sadness, no relief, no closure. Just emptiness. Mom sent another letter after Emma's death. She blamed the prison system. She blamed the other inmate. She blamed everyone except herself and Emma for the choices they'd made. I threw that letter away without reading it completely. 5 years have passed since that terrible night. I've built a new life with David. We moved across the country, away from all the memories and media attention. We have a daughter now. Little Emma. We named her after the sister I thought I knew, before I learned who she really was. Maybe that seems strange, but I wanted to reclaim the name, to associate it with love and innocence instead of murder and betrayal. Our Emma will grow up knowing the truth about her family history, but she'll also grow up knowing that we chose love over greed, truth over lies, that when faced with an impossible situation, we did the right thing. Even when it cost us everything we thought we knew about our family. I still think about that night sometimes. About the moment David whispered in my ear that we needed to leave. About how different things would have been if I hadn't listened to him. If I'd dismissed his concerns as paranoia, like I'd done so many times before. 7 people would be dead instead of 3. Including possibly me and David, once Mom and Emma realized we suspected something. They'd already crossed the line into murder. What would have stopped them from crossing it again? Sometimes I wonder if there's a parallel universe where we stayed at that party. Where we ate the cake and complimented Emma on her baking. Where we died alongside Grandpa and Uncle Mike and Great Aunt Ruth. In that universe, Mom and Emma might have gotten away with it. They might have inherited millions and lived comfortable lives built on the bones of their victims. But in this universe, justice prevailed. It came at a terrible cost. The loss of family. The destruction of trust. The knowledge that people you love are capable of unimaginable evil. But justice prevailed. The surviving victims recovered, mostly. Cousin Janet still has heart problems from the poisoning, but she's alive. She sends us Christmas cards every year with pictures of her grandchildren. Uncle Mike's widow, Diane, started a foundation in his memory to help families affected by domestic violence and elder abuse. She asked me to serve on the board. It was hard at first, talking about what happened. But it felt important to turn our tragedy into something meaningful. To help other families recognize warning signs before it's too late. Because the signs were there, if I'd known how to read them. The isolation tactics. The financial manipulation. The way Mom and Emma had gradually taken control of Grandpa's care and cut him off from other support systems. It's a pattern that repeats itself in families across the country. Children who see their parents as obstacles to inheritance rather than people deserving of love and respect. Most of the time it doesn't escalate to murder. But elder abuse is more common than people realize. And it usually comes from within the family. That's the hardest truth I've learned. That the people who are supposed to protect us are sometimes the ones we most need protection from. But I've also learned that there are good people in the world. People like David, who trust their instincts even when it's uncomfortable. People like Detective Martinez, who took our concerns seriously instead of dismissing them. People like Dr. Chen, who helped me rebuild my shattered sense of trust. People like the nurses who worked tirelessly to save the poisoning victims. People like you, listening to this story and hopefully learning from our experience. Evil exists. It sometimes wears familiar faces and speaks in loving voices. But good exists too. And when good people pay attention and take action, they can stop terrible things from happening. They can save lives, including their own. If you take one thing away from this story, let it be this: trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is wrong. If someone you love is acting out of character, pay attention. If you see signs of abuse or manipulation, speak up. Don't worry about being dramatic or causing family conflict. Don't worry about being wrong. The cost of silence is too high. I learned that lesson on a Saturday night in October, when my husband's whispered warning saved my life. When a 90th birthday party became a crime scene. When I discovered that the people I trusted most were the ones I should have feared. It's a lesson I'll never forget. And one I hope you'll never need to learn the hard way. Because some betrayals you never fully recover from. Some trust, once broken, can never be repaired. But you can survive. You can rebuild. You can find love and meaning again. It just looks different than it did before. More careful. More precious. More grateful for the genuine connections that remain. David and I are stronger now than we ever were before that night. Our marriage was tested by trauma and came out unbreakable. Our daughter will grow up in a family that chooses honesty over comfort. That faces hard truths instead of living in denial. That protects the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. She'll never know her grandmother or aunt. But she'll know that her parents chose what was right over what was easy. That when faced with an impossible choice, we chose justice. Even when justice meant destroying everything we thought we knew about our family. Even when it meant admitting that the people who raised me were monsters. Even when it meant living with the knowledge that I could have prevented more deaths if I'd acted sooner. That guilt will always be with me. The what ifs and should haves that plague survivors of family violence. But so will the knowledge that we saved lives. That our actions mattered. That good can triumph over evil, even when evil wears the face of someone you love. That's the ending to this story. Not a happy ending, exactly. But a just one. Not a perfect resolution, but a meaningful one. Not a fairy tale, but the truth. And sometimes, the truth is the only ending that matters. Even when it breaks your heart. Even when it changes everything. Even when it costs you the family you thought you had. Because the family worth having is the one built on love and trust. Not the one held together by lies and fear. Not the one willing to kill for money. But the one willing to fight for what's right. The one willing to make hard choices. The one willing to face difficult truths. That's the family David and I built from the ashes of the one I lost. That's the family our daughter will inherit. And that's the family that will honor the memory of Grandpa and Uncle Mike and Great-Aunt Ruth. Not with silence or denial or forgiveness we don't feel. But with justice. With truth. With the promise that their deaths meant something. That they stopped a pattern of abuse before it could claim more victims. That their lives mattered. That they were loved. That they were worth saving. Even though we were too late to save them all. This is Sarah, signing off. Thank you for listening to the hardest story I've ever had to tell. I hope it helps someone, somewhere, recognize the signs before it's too late. I hope it saves a life. Because that's what stories like this are for. Not entertainment, not sympathy, but prevention. And maybe, just maybe, healing. For all of us who've lost family to betrayal. For all of us who've had to choose justice over loyalty. For all of us learning to trust again after having that trust shattered. We're not alone. We're survivors. And our stories matter. Even when they're hard to tell. Even when they're harder to hear. Especially then. Because the truth, no matter how painful, is always worth telling. Always worth hearing. Always worth remembering. So we never forget. So it never happens again. So love wins. In the end, love always wins. Even when it doesn't look like we thought it would. Even when it costs us everything we thought we wanted. Love wins. Remember that. And remember to trust your instincts. They might just save your life.